Hello, everyone. It's Alysia Silberg, founder of the Global Fireside Chat and general partner at Street Global. I'm excited to be joined by Christian Meyers, my business partner in Street Global, for this edition of our weekly Entrepreneur Wednesdays Fireside Chat. Happy Wednesday and welcome to our 2018 look at new technologies driving innovation and improving our lives. In this Fireside Chat, we'll look at how entrepreneurs and researchers are using wearable connected technology to extend our senses and provide us with information that we can use in practical ways to help with our health, learning, and performance. I'm grateful to say that I've been able to see this fascinating work up close at incubators, technology leaders, and inside startups. Now, because of significant investment in the space, entrepreneurs are quickening the pace of innovation. The level of participation has grown tremendously among entrepreneurs and investors. That's what we're exploring today. What's happening, the opportunity, trends, issues play in this and real opportunity that's affecting us all. I'm broadcasting from San Francisco, a place where I get to meet very cool entrepreneurs working to extend and amplify our senses with technology and apply that to opportunities in health, entertainment, and other industries. I'm very inspired by their example and hope this show furthers their efforts. On that note, I'm grateful to be joined by some incredibly special inventors, entrepreneurs, investors, researchers, and thought leaders working in technology, corporate development, investing, and entrepreneurship who are taking their time to share their insights today so we can learn from them. For those of you who don't know, our topic for today is wearable connected technology, an exciting new era in health, well-being, performance, experience, and more. Now I've got your interest peak. Let me go ahead and introduce you to our VIP guests before asking them to properly introduce themselves to you. Welcome to Washington, D.C.-based Jordan Marcus, who's an entrepreneur focusing on operations optimization. Welcome to California-based Greg Kerr, who's a development, sustainability, and cryptocurrency entrepreneur. Welcome to Darren Sherko, who you all know very well by now, who's a global technology entrepreneur and CTO. Welcome to California-based Camille Eddy, who's a STEM thought leader and robotics and machine learning engineer. Welcome to Toronto-based John Alexu, who's a technology and music entrepreneur. Welcome to California-based Siva Raj, who's a health, technology, and fitness entrepreneur. And welcome to London-based Matthew Lowe, who's a technologist, strategist, and entrepreneur. Now let's ask our VIPs to introduce themselves to you, starting with Jordan. Jordan, please say hi to everyone.
Hey, how's it going? Jordan Marcus from Washington, D.C., as Alyssa just mentioned.
Welcome, Jordan. Very excited to have you join us. Greg, please say hi to everyone.
Hi, I'm Greg Kerr. I'm excited to be here, and thanks for the opportunity to talk about this great topic.
Awesome. Welcome, Greg. Darren, please say hi to everyone.
Hey, everybody. Unusual for me to be on the on I guess the live side of the mic. Normally, I'm sort of sitting in the background making stuff happen, but it's great to be on the show today. I think that the topic is incredibly interesting. I've done a lot around different types of, well, not wearable technologies, but connected technologies, analyzing speech, analyzing all different kinds of things, both from a business perspective, as well as I'm an avid runner and I kind of am using all the toys to try and improve myself. So using wearable technology to get improvement there. And yeah, it's great to be here and I'm really looking forward to the show. So hi.
Welcome, Darren. Camille, say hi to everyone.
Good morning. Thank you for having me on here. And yeah, I'm really excited to be here and talk about this amazing space.
Welcome, Camille. John, say hi to everyone.
Hi, guys. It's John Alexu. Thank you very much for having me, Alysia. Really looking forward to this.
Welcome back, John. Siva, say hi to everyone.
Hey, everyone. I'm Shiva, based in San Francisco, founder and CEO of Wearable, which is an early-stage fitness startup. Really excited to be on this call, and thanks for having me on it.
Thank you, Siva. Matthew, please say hi.
Hey, guys. Matthew from a gloomy day in London. Thank you for the opportunity. The really great topic. I think we're all a little bit ignorant as to what exactly the picture we're going to create for the future, but any direction is good direction when we talk about the future. So really excited, and let's get going.
Thank you, Matthew. And Christian, say hi to everyone.
Hello, everyone. This is Christian Meyers from San Francisco. I'm Alysia's business partner, and we invest in seed stage technology and tech-enabled companies that are addressing some of the world's biggest challenges in areas such as healthcare, and many of them are using connected wearable technology in those domains, and I'm very excited to be here. Thank you.
Welcome, Christian. Just before we jump into our questions for our VIP guests, a few shout-outs. Don't forget to keep sending your questions through to inspireme@onlinefiresidechat.com, and we'll always do our very best to have them answered by our VIP guests. Just a reminder, we have community champions and ever-growing meetup groups in now over 60 countries around the globe. On that note, thank you to all our volunteer champions from around the globe. You're the heart of our community, and we wouldn't be here today without you. As you all know, we're trying to reach 100 countries, and with your help, we can make it happen. Thank you again to our growing family of supporters and collaborators from around the developing world who are once again hosting sessions for hundreds of entrepreneurs who don't have access to the bandwidth or understanding of the English language to join our sessions on their own. Thank you to all the government ministries, UN offices, World Economic Forum, US Embassy Corners, British Council offices, all the universities, schools, business incubators, radio stations, and community centers for hosting us and for helping us make sure we succeed and change the world. Thank you again to our UN Women team. We are proud to do this every single week and change the world together. Now you want to learn from the best, and they are definitely here today. So let's jump on in and start learning. Our subject, as you all know, is wearable connected technology, an exciting new era in health, well-being, performance, experience, and more. Let's start off with this easy question, and we're going to pose it at John, and we'd love to hear from you, Jordan, as well. So guys, get comfortable, sit back, relax, and let's have some fun today. John, let's set the stage with some foundational concepts about wearable and related technology and how we will use it. Can you tell us, what do wearable connected technologies really encompass? Please go ahead.
Well, I think it's the idea of, really pulling in any technology that you're using off the body and trying to put it onto the body with really understanding what's happening in the body. So for SubPac, we're interested in high fidelity vibrations and the impact that can make on the body, all the way from entertainment to health and wellness. And I think with technology and form factors improving every day, I think the sky's really the limit.
Thank you, John. Jordan, would you like to go ahead and share your insights here?
For sure. Thank you. So in terms of wearable technology and what it really encompasses, for me, I'm into the Apple Watch. I follow a lot what's going on there, and with similar technologies beyond just that. And similar to what was just said, I think kind of piggybacking on that is, it encompasses what's going on in our bodies. A lot of the wearable tech, it follows our data, whether it's the health data or our daily tasks or how far we're walking during the day or whatever. It really gives individuals and consumers insights that they haven't had in the past that can really help them improve their lives on a daily basis. Which is really interesting to see how it will evolve and where it will go, in the next 10 years, when we'll be even more connected and where this idea of singularity will become more prevalent.
Thank you, Jordan. Siva, we'd love to hear from you here. Matthew, of course, we'd love to hear your thoughts too. Siva, please tell us how you personally working with these technologies.
Sure. So Revo is essentially a stationary bike that integrates a wearable heart rate monitor and guides you through a lab quality fitness test, also known as a VO2 max test, to first measure your strengths and weaknesses as an individual. And so we measure gold standard fitness metrics like VO2 max, recovery, and endurance, and then adapts the training for each individual based on that data. And so there are two, and so essentially, what you're trying to do here is capture information from that individual. We capture heart rate and we capture energy expenditure directly from the bike using a power sensor. And we make sense of the data. We put the two together. So as you're doing the test, we're looking at how much output you're producing on your bike and the impact on your physiology in terms of your heart rate at every step. And that allows us to draw a lot of inferences about where your thresholds are and what your overall capacity is, and then to personalize the training.
Thank you, Siva. Matthew, we'd love to hear from you. How are you using some of these technologies? Are you working with them? Please go ahead.
So, yeah, absolutely. I think I'll answer in two parts. So as a professional, as a fintech investor, as well as kind of innovation and futurist, I pretty much kind of engage with individuals as well as institutions that approach the idea of Internet of Things and the connectivity of devices. So speaking kind of the software side and the hardware side. And it's quite interesting to see this revelation in kind of the makeup of hardware using conductivity in fabrics, nanotechnology, biohacking practices, which are really interesting. So integrating technology under the skin and using that to leverage capability, as well as kind of innovation in substances like graphene, which pretty much I suspect will be the hero of wearable tech. Predominantly thanks to its strength in better conductivity rather than silicone and lightweight kind of elements. The second answer to fitness enthusiast, I'm a triathlete, and I constantly use the likes of a Garmin smartwatch, as well as footpod power meters, cycle power meters, heart rate sensors, and I'm constantly looking for an item that is expanding its range of capability in giving me the exact metrics of data as to how I'm performing and how I can be better.
Thank you so much, Matthew. Next question is for Camille and Greg. And Camille, we'd love to hear from you. You're up to some very interesting stuff. What are some of the general ways we can enhance our senses, our perception awareness using wearables? Please go ahead.
Yeah, I was recently working on a project actually that dealt with empathy and trying to increase someone's empathy using a wearable. This idea revolved around, how do you send encouragement to each other when you're in a situation where you're feeling down, and how do you let people know about it? So I feel like you can use it, just like we've been hearing about, your senses, like your sight and your ability to get around and improve your information flow. But you can also use it for a very, tangible sense of empathy and being able to connect with other people on a more maybe mentorship level, maybe, reaching out. One of the examples that we used was that someone was speaking on a stage and they felt nervous. Like, what could we send them encouragement message so they know that there are people out there, rooting for them. So that was one example that we actually worked with, and I'm still looking at it and seeing what else we can do with that.
Thank you, Camille. And Greg, we'd love to hear from you here. What are some of the general ways you believe we can enhance our senses and perception awareness through wearables technology? Please go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way I do it, and I work in high-risk conflict zones. I was in the Ebola crisis. And so I've always looked at ways to relax and kind of make sure my decision-making isn't clouded by fear. So I think that I use a wearable that does what's called bilateral alternating stimulation, which it sends vibrations to two pods on either side of my body, which keeps my body from going into fight, flight, or freeze. So my cortisol levels stay low, my decision-making stays rooted in my executive brain and not my kind of primal senses. And I see it as something that can help me perform better, make better decisions, get better sleep. So I think this comes down to, like, wearables are giving us the capability to measure things like our stress, our heart rate, and all these other bioindicators. And what gets measured gets fixed. So that's where I think you're seeing this new shift where we can measure so much of our body and our lives that we can start tweaking that and start finding outcomes and performance gauges that are diagnostic with these tools.
Thank you so much, Greg. And now, Darren and John, we'd love to hear from you here. Darren, please go ahead and share some of your favorite examples of wearable technology in action. John, we'd love to hear from you too, please. Go ahead, Darren.
So there's been quite a few advancements around some of the cool things that are out at the moment is wearable skin, which potentially should be on the market in a few years. It's a layer of skin that you put on your skin. It measures your heart rate, how you're doing, gives you a bunch of information that you might need. Other things, for example, diabetic blood glucose measurement without having to go into the body, so it sits on top of your liver. One of the other things from a clothing and fabric perspective that I found quite interesting is Wearable is zips that basically are able to connect and provide information as to what's happening. So if, for example, with luggage, if your bag is open, you can have a record that your bag was opened. For clothing, it'll tell you if your zip is open or closed. It connects to your smartphone. So there are some very cool things happening. I think the big thing is about finding applications that really do add value to everyday life, and then also understanding the data that comes from those values.
Thank you, Darren. John, we'd love to hear from you as well. Can you give us some good examples?
Really well said, Darren. I mean, I think, there's been a lot of great things said. The one thing I will add are some of the very interesting EEG devices that, really contain biosensors that deliver, really reliable insights into the electrical activity of the brain. And I think, there's some very interesting things going on in that space, in addition to some of the interesting things that have already been discussed today.
Thank you, John. And Camille, this next question's for you. We'd love to hear from you also, Siva. Camille, what are some of the general advancements and new ingredients that are setting the stage for more and more activity in the space? So maybe you can tell us about the networks, materials being used. Please go ahead, Camille.
Yeah, actually, I want to talk about that from a perspective of just bringing more students into the scene. I've been, like I mentioned, I do a lot of student mentorship in design thinking. I'm a Stanford University Innovation Fellow. And one of the things that I've been seeing is just like an increased interest in this type of technology from a very early standpoint. Like if you have a student that's thinking about this as their first walk out, like this is what I want to engage in, I'm seeing people use things like 3D printing, ideation, and kind of understanding and trying to understand this space. So I think what I'm excited for is in the new advanced ingredients, it's just the idea that more people are getting involved and more ideas are coming into play. And I'm really excited about that because, I always talk to students and sometimes they come up with really high expectations. They're like, oh, this is where we want to be. And then they move into the space of where wearable technology is today. So I'm really excited about just this intake of more and more entrepreneurs and innovators in the space.
Thank you, Camille. Shiva, we'd love to hear from you in terms of advancements, again, in networks, materials. Yeah, some of the activity. Please go ahead.
Sure. I think, so if you look at the wearable space over the last literally 10 years in terms of what's been happening, I think, so Gen 1 wearables were single sensor wearables is how I think about it. So they're capturing single piece of data, like the steps that you counted with accelerometers, or your heart rate, for example. Gen 2 wearables have tried to combine those pieces of data together into a single unit. So the Apple Watch has heart rate and steps and GPS and a few other things. And in parallel, trying to make it easier and easier for people to kind of wear it continuously, whether it's on the wrist or in your ear with a headphone, in clothes, for example, with textiles and, shorts, etc. Gen 3, and I think here's where I see kind of some of the challenges that the industry has to take on, is to actually help people make sense of the data. And I think the biggest opportunity we have in the wearable space is really to start to combine these pieces of data together that are coming out from a lot of these sensors to help people make sense of it when they need to understand that information and to take action based on that.
Thank you so much, Shiva. And our next question goes to Jordan and Matthew, and we'd also love to hear from you, Greg. So Jordan, what are some of the things you're learning in terms of us using wearable technologies, both individually and collectively? Please go ahead, Jordan.
For sure. So I think it goes to what was kind of just said a little bit is the ability to leverage data to help individuals and to also help the collective is incredibly powerful, and I think is the progression we're starting to see. From my end of it, so in the sensor technology that we bring at Indoors to cannabis farms, obviously it's not wearables on humans, but it's wearables on plants. And obviously the organism of a plant is very complex, and there are a lot of things that make it tick and make it grow and make it grow not so well. And so what we're seeing is we're starting to collect data with some of our early customers, is that, you know, as an individual plant in a farm, you can learn a lot, and you can learn the little things that make that one plant or that one grow zone operate efficiently. But once you start equating that data across the board and comparing it to the whole entire grow zone, the holistic sense of the facility, it brings value 10x to what you're doing, because you're able to then compare and contrast and see what's going on, and think of things that you otherwise wouldn't have. So I think on the individual level, it's extremely helpful, and on the collective level, it brings that to the next level of being able to leverage the sensing and the data collection and the technology available out there today.
Thank you so much, Jordan. Matthew, would love to hear from you here. What are we learning using these technologies? Please go ahead.
So it's a great question, because a lot of the people that I deal with cannot really make sense of what they're doing in the immediate to inform the future. And I think in the immediate, we're dealing as individuals to individuals like diseases or medical conditions for me as an individual. But when we look to the future, we look at society as a collective, and how wearables, as well as the Internet of Things, can really benefit society as a collective. And that's where you get into generation 4 to continue from Siva's progression, where wearables become more understanding of emotions. They become a little bit more aware of individuals' emotional responses to the external collective, and you're an individual kind of piece of that puzzle. And that's where it gets quite interesting, because the data really needs to be.
We seem to have lost Matthew there for a minute. I think he's having some connectivity problems. Greg, we'd love to hear from you here, and then Darren had some thoughts. We will come back to Matthew, not a problem. We seem to lose you. Greg, please go ahead.
Sure. One of the paradoxes, or one of the issues that San Francisco has as a progressive city, is that a lot of the tech that it develops goes to broadening this gap between the haves and have-nots. And it's interesting that, you know, we're collecting data and we're understanding health information on a very specific group of people that can afford this type of tech. I think one of the challenges we need to do is to look and see how this tech can quickly get to the people that most need it. Between the developing world, prisoners, you know, there's like these demographics that need help with their health and decision making that are beyond the wealthy. And I think that's where cryptocurrencies might play a part in this. You know, the point that Bitcoin made was that you can assign value to anything. And so we can assign value to, say, maybe the data that can result from measuring health performance of the developing world or specific, you know, group of people in a viral outbreak. Say maybe, you know, that type of information might be adaptable there. And then too, like there's a great company called ClinicCoin coming out that's putting a digital value to doing healthy behaviors and then monitoring that through tech. So there's going to be these economies in value generation by doing healthy things, going to a yoga class or using a toilet or washing your hands, you know, on all the different spectrums there. So I think proliferation may happen in the developing world if we focus on them and we use like blockchain or cryptocurrency to help incentivize that type of behavior.
Thank you so much, Greg. And I know Darren's got some thoughts he wants to share here too before Christian shares his insights for our community. Darren, please go ahead.
Thanks, Liz. Okay, so there are a few things that I wanted to comment on. From me, what I found is I've been doing a lot of investigation in terms of wearables from a consumer perspective as a runner, trying to improve, trying to use the technology to really optimize my running efforts and do some great stuff with it. And what I've found is a lot of the wearables, devices out there, pods and different types of pods, they measure a whole lot of data. And there have been a number of Kickstarter campaigns that have been launched around them. They measure a bunch of data, but unfortunately what ends up happening is they fall short on the insights. So they collect all this data, but they don't really give you an effective understanding of what that data actually means, which I find that's something for me that's a place where we need to really move forward. And I think it's a great opportunity for entrepreneurs to work together with these manufacturers to come up with ways in order to try and optimize the data and get good value from it. And also just on that side, I mean, and it's not only about wearables. One of our previous startups was a sales enablement technology. And what we actually did is we analyzed interactions between salespeople and their customers. And we picked up pitch and tone analysis. We picked up effectiveness of their sales pitch, looking at the different topics that were discussed, looking at all the different elements that were put in. Now, that information is really valuable if you can find a proper application and come up with a way and provide valuable insight and knowledge that you can glean from that information. So I think there's a lot of wearable stuff that's been happening for a long time, or certainly tracking. I mean, there's a medical aid in South Africa, or medical insurance company that based a large portion of their business on healthy living. So they track literally every part of your lifestyle, and they have been doing it for probably the last 10 years, where they understand and they reward you, as Greg was talking about, for good behavior, for being healthy, for going to gym, for doing running races, for whatever you do, they reward you for those positive lifestyle behaviors. So if you can actually tap into it, get the information, and actually execute it and get value from it, there's huge value in it. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you so much, Darren. And moving on to our next question, we'd love to hear from you here, Greg, John, and Steve. People often think of wearables purely in terms of consumer use, but let's talk on industries and businesses so our listeners have a sense of how big this space actually is. Greg, what industries are you studying for wearables applications, and what are some of the work activities you're studying? We'd love to hear from you. Please go ahead.
Yeah, when it comes to stress and maybe even sleep enhancement, these types of things, I feel like there's some targeted demographics that need the most help. I think police and first responders might be one of those areas where these can really help. You know, every policeman, should have some kind of wearable on him measuring his heart rate and his stress levels as he's pulling his weapon. And that needs to be measured and studied as we kind of convert or confront those types of social issues. Think about stress inoculation and wearables in bringing down cortisol and stress levels in, say, diplomatic efforts. Imagine how much more we could get out of our diplomats if they were not full of fear and stress as they created deals that make people come together. And then I think, too, when it comes to corporate performance, and almost like an indicator of which companies are going to be relevant and have happy, productive employees, you can measure that by which employers are looking at and measuring the health of their employees. So I think there is a group, and almost like kind of if you push the system onto workers, where it's like, hey, if you start working out and we lower our health insurance, or, looking at performance within groups and organizations.
Thank you so much, John. We definitely want to hear from you here. And then Shiva, we'd love to hear from you. John, please go ahead.
Yeah, really great points, Greg. I think as far as industries, wearables and certainly the work that we do at Subpack, really digs into, several industries. I think gaming is one that is obviously a massive market, but having a deeper connection to what's going on into the gaming experience, certainly something that, I know a lot of that community is interested in. An interesting anecdote that we had with first responders is we had a couple of fire battalions looking to our technology as a means to enhance communication. So sending signals to people that are in houses that are about to burn down. It's very difficult to hear over the radio, and I think sending high fidelity pulses and communicating that way certainly beats anything that you can hear over a radio, and can certainly move to saving a lot of lives. So those are two pretty diverse examples, but I think the idea of wearables is really, penetrating a number of different markets.
Thank you so much, John. And I know Christian had some thoughts he wanted to share after Shiva. We'll get to Christian shortly. Shiva, please go ahead.
So I just want to pick up a point that Greg made about organizations using this kind of data to track performance. And so some of our customers include corporate wellness programs and medical centers, right? And we've had a beta customer based in the Bay Area who's a leading technology company where we are tracking metrics, fitness metrics such as VO2 max and recovery on individuals within the company who are using Wearable. And so there's some really interesting things that we see. For example, when people come back after a long break, like a Christmas or a New Year break, we see the numbers jump up, right? And so we can see fitness metrics which correlate very tightly with your day-to-day performance and your sense of well-being jump up after a big break. And we can also see collectively sometimes recovery dropping across the entire group, perhaps at times of high stress and people are releasing a product or there's other stuff going on with the organization. And so it's really interesting to see that the things that you do at an organizational level can have impact across the board on things that you don't necessarily may be aware are being impacted, such as the health and well-being of those individuals. So it's not just about the individual responsibility for health, that's important, but it's also about the organization understanding how the things it does or doesn't do can impact health and performance.
Thank you so much, Shiva. Christian, please go ahead.
Thank you, Alysia. I just wanted to highlight the scope of this opportunity for the entrepreneurs listening. When we're talking about connected wearables, we're really talking about gathering information from both the external and our internal physical worlds and presenting it to people. And we sound, I could, and it's someone speaking, I could translate that. And then we're presenting it to people and they can act on it and learn from it. And so what does that encompass? It encompasses every activity humans conduct in both their personal and professional lives. As the panelists mentioned, these devices can not only be used with humans, they can be used with plants and animals as well. So we can include them in this network that we're creating. It shows you how the opportunity is even bigger. And then once we have all that information, we are collecting large sets of data that we can learn from. There are challenges when it comes to who's participating and the ethics around that, and that's an opportunity as well. And then we've been talking about different industries, and the scope of industries that we've just talked about has been breathtakingly large. We've talked about healthcare, physical health, mental health. We've talked about entertainment and music. We've talked about government and civil service. Some of the other areas where we see this in use is in design. So this is really going to change everything we do, every activity. It's also a very challenging type of business because there are a lot of pieces. You have hardware, you have people using these devices, you have the data, and you have the analysis. And that's some of what we're going to get into here for entrepreneurs, because it's important to know that the opportunity is vast, and then how you execute on it is a big part of whether or not your business succeeds. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christian. Moving on to our next question. Darren, we'd love to hear from you here. Jordan, of course, and Camille. Let's talk about home use. What are some of the wearable technologies? What role are they going to play? Let's hear it from you guys. Darren, please go ahead.
So for a while, there are some very cool home use technologies, and whilst the health and well-being is really important, it's really cool to kind of start making your life a little bit easier. So focusing on the experience side. Some of the things that I've bumped into, which are pretty cool, is virtual labels for clothing, which you can scan, and it can talk to a washing machine and give you an idea of what actually needs to be done and how things need to be washed. Other things are electronic or automatic vacuum cleaners that walk around your house and clean your house for you. And we've had one for a couple of years, and the tech has definitely grown and improved over the years. But integrate that into your smartphone, integrate that into your apartment. So you walk into your house, for example, and your vacuum cleaner needs to know that it needs to go up. If it's busy working, it sees you coming and it needs to go back and sit down and do its thing. Other things are refrigerators, for example, that if you've got a wearable on your arm that picks up your hydration levels, you walk into the kitchen, it can get the refrigerator to pour you some water. So there are a lot of different things that can start optimizing your life and start helping you live your life better, linking back to thermostats. I mean, in the UK, Nest has become really big in terms of thermostat living and really kind of arriving in your house, and your thermostats automatically adjust. or doing it via time delays. So you're really improving your way of life, simplifying things whilst they are a little bit more complex, that your actual way of life becomes more simple. So there are a number of really cool technologies out there. Thanks.
Thank you, Darren. Jordan, we'd love to hear from you here.
Yeah, for sure. I think from a, especially from a home use perspective, health and wellness is such a complex issue, and there can be so many problems and areas out there of expertise, whether it's whether it's someone using a modern pin to check their blood sugar levels if they have diabetes, or people who need constant readings of their heart rates or other issues going on with them, and being able to track data that way. One interesting startup I saw recently, actually based out of Israel, was a startup that was tracking how people were intaking their daily medicine. So it was something that would hook up to the phone, and it was a pack for your medicine. It would read based on your daily usage or your daily dose, how much you would need, and at a certain time every day it would alert you, and you would accept, and it would send out the pills you needed, the drugs you needed for that day. I saw that and I found that super interesting, because that's tackling, not just an issue of what people should be or shouldn't be putting into their bodies, but if there is a drug that someone needs on a daily basis to keep them at certain levels of health, having something track the operation of that, or managing the day-to-day of that, is extremely important for people. And such a simple solution can be combined with wearables to really bring tons of value to people's lives.
Thank you so much, Jordan. Camille, we'd love to hear from you here. Please go ahead.
Yeah. I feel like with the way we're going, the home might be the last frontier, because we need really adopters and all those things. But some of the examples that I've seen for home use is smart mirrors, where you put your phone down and your camera screen will go up to your mirror, so you can just more on-demand information when you want that information to be visible. And then another example is HP has a printer service to an ink service, so that your printer will know when your ink levels are getting low, and then it will ship directly to your house. So those are just, examples of we are an on-demand society, and we are increasingly asking for our things to come in on demand. But hopefully we'll just continue improving the space. Getting, for example, I haven't seen a lot of options for, someone without a big budget to just bring in new wearable technology into the home. And I think we need to increase on that field to get more use of more examples and more technology.
Thank you so much, Camille. Now let's talk about developing careers and becoming entrepreneurs in the wearable space. We'd love to hear from you here, John, Shiva, and Greg. If any of our other VIPs want to add, just let us know. What do you recommend to people developing their careers, and what are the opportunities for entrepreneurs in this space? John, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. Obviously, wearables has been a pretty big buzzword for a number of years. And I think that one of the most important things that we need to focus on is really making sure that, anything that we put on our body is really, a part of our everyday life, and not something that sort of stands out or makes it more uncomfortable for people to operate. There's definitely opportunity in wearables and other areas of technology, no doubt. As far as I won't dig into just specific sort of high level things. I think Greg made one of the best points today, which was things that we develop, we better make sure there are more use cases other than, the very few that have the resources to afford them. I think, perhaps we're going to be running into bigger problems than, how to monitor certain things if we're only creating things that are accessible to, small groups of people that have the resources to do so. So something very important for entrepreneurs is to make sure that you've got some element of conscious capitalism attached to what you're doing.
Thank you, John. Shiva, we'd love to hear from you here. Please go ahead.
So I'd say the thing to really focus on is find a problem that you personally have faced or passionate about. And I generally find that when you do that, it gives you motivation that's much deeper than any other way of finding motivation. Secondly, you kind of persist for longer. And a lot of the solutions that we're building now require combinations of hardware and software often, and reaching multiple market segments. And you have to be able to persist to be able to see those products through. And so finding a problem that you're personally passionate about is really gives you that motivation to persist.
Thank you so much, Shiva. Greg, I know you had some insights you wanted to share here. Please go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, as an entrepreneur, I'd say the number one rule is practice what you preach. Use your device or whatever you're doing in your daily life so you can attest to it. And then secondly, I think be clever in the way you solve big problems. If it's stress inoculation, obviously it's easy to go after the high-end market and people that can afford. But I always felt like you could even make more money if you targeted, say, that we have a horrible kind of for-profit prison system in the United States. So if we could get those prisoners, getting better sleep and better stress inoculation and better decision making, but then also like point out to these for-profit jailers that it's actually kind of a workplace environmental issue, and so you're helping people and making money at the same time in a clever way.
Thank you so much. Now, moving on to our next question. I noticed some of VIPs had some other insights they wanted to share. We're going to circle around. Let's talk about some of the challenges also that entrepreneurs are facing. So I know, Matthew, you had some thoughts you wanted to share here. We'd love to hear from Matthew. Jordan.
The challenges are quite a few. And when I sit across a table from any entrepreneur in the IoT space or the wearable space, I really have a few questions that always go a little bit unanswered, and with reason. And those specifically are how data and software applications can integrate with existing products. Like how do you integrate a smart sensor into a mattress? Do you change the fabric at risk of it becoming less comfortable and maybe providing more value in the metrics? Or do you want to keep the existing products as progressive as they truly are? So the integration is always a question. And then accessibility. And I talk about accessibility from the standpoint that in the UK, we've just had a new piece of regulation be released called the Payment Services Directive 2, which pretty much opens up all banking to all third parties. So a lot of your banking information can be absorbed and used to your benefit by third-party individuals like Google or Facebook. And the accessibility issue is somewhat kind of that goes unanswered amongst people talking about the future, because it's kind of, are you happy to give access to third parties of your prized data? And that's something that I guess kind of the entire infrastructure around technology needs to adapt to.
Thank you so much, Matthew. We'll definitely come back to you. Jordan, we'd love to hear from you here. Please go ahead. What opportunities there are for entrepreneurs? What are the challenges? What advice would you give to entrepreneurs? Please go ahead. Then we'll hear from Darren and Christian before we move on to our investor section of the show. Please go ahead, Jordan.
For sure. Thank you. So I think it's two-pronged, specifically with the IoT space and wearable space. Similar to what was just said, keep in mind what data you're collecting, and keep in mind what that means for your customers, for your stakeholders, for your clients, whoever is involved. Understand what that data that you're collecting and how you're using it means for everyone, or all of the collective parties and the individuals, as in general. I think for entrepreneurs, really across the board, no matter what vertical you're in, it's really great if you can find the right team and build around that. I thought coming from Lockheed Martin, I could jump into a startup of a small team after managing a large team and everything would be great. But obviously that wasn't the case. And there's tons of challenges that you have to face as an entrepreneur. And in general, no matter what space you're in, be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Because if you're not, entrepreneurship might not be the best path for you.
Extremely good advice there. Darren, we'd love to hear from you here before we ask Christian his thoughts for our community. Darren, please go ahead.
Yeah, so mine's short and sweet. And as we said, we've been down this road a couple of times. My one suggestion for people looking to become entrepreneurs in this space, there are a lot of guys collecting data, building mechanisms out there. If you could look at partnering with some of them instead of reinventing the wheel time and again, it could make your journey a hell of a lot easier. And then just find the application and find the right use for the information that they're collecting. That is a huge opportunity.
Thank you so much, Darren. And Christian, please go ahead.
Well, for the entrepreneurs out there, I just wanted to say that just as the opportunity here is vast, the complexity of the opportunity is vast. These are very complex businesses with a lot of components. You need hardware, software, networks, data, ways of analyzing the data, a user interface, etc. And funding, developing, manufacturing, selling, deploying, repairing, and ensuring the adoption of all of that is a very challenging business. So for anyone endeavoring to get into this area, just make sure that you're very well prepared before beginning one of these businesses. And that may involve working for a large company that is already working in one of these areas. And it may involve, as Darren said, partnering with companies that already have strength in these areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian. Moving on to our investor section. We'd love to hear from you, Greg, then John, Shiva, and definitely Camille as well. Let's talk about investors. Greg, what's the general investment climate like? In your opinion, what are investors looking for? Are there gaps in the ecosystem? And would you recommend anything to investors listening today? Please go ahead, Greg.
Well, I'd say investors for wearables, it's everybody. There's this level of people that are looking to make a lot of money, and they see this as a future tech industry. I think that, impact investing, once again, if you find somebody that wants to solve problems and not create a bigger gap, that's where I think that somebody can cleverly syncopate the doing well by people and making profit and getting these types of techs and wearables into the developing world that will have the most impact. And I think there should be a refocus into the masses. And we should be finding investors that want to facilitate that.
Thank you so much, Greg. John, we definitely want to hear from you here. Please go ahead.
As an entrepreneur, really finding the right investors is critical. They're going to be with you through the duration of your journey, almost a part of the family. So, we've been lucky enough to have investors like Christian. And I think just having the confidence to not just take the first check that sort of gets in front of your eyes, but really spend time with investors because, like I said, they're going to be with you through the entire journey.
Thank you, John. Shiva, we definitely want to hear from you here. Go ahead, please.
So specifically in the wearable space, from what I can tell, a few years back, it was tough to raise money. And I think there were genuine questions about hardware. Investment in hardware was very weak. That has changed, though, and there's been quite a bit of investment coming into the hardware space. Not all of it has paid off. So we've seen some, pretty big amounts of money going into companies like Docero, for example, that didn't really pay off. Pebble, for example, has struggled to be successful and eventually got sold to Fitbit. But that doesn't seem to have entirely dulled investment, though I do find that investors are more cautious and looking for to find ways and looking for startups that have unique ways and unique advantages, particularly on the distribution side, that would help them scale and go beyond early adopter communities. So that's the change that I'm seeing today.
Thank you so much, Shiva. And our next question is around large corporations and the role they play. We'd love to hear from you, Camille, Jordan, and John. Camille, what is the role of large corporations when it comes to the wearables ecosystem, both from a technology and non-technology perspective? Please go ahead.
Yeah, this is something that I'm actually really passionate about, and I think it's really important for larger corporations. So you got the HPs, you got the Googles, you got the Facebooks, that they bring in people that are innovative and are thinking new things. One of the things that can happen is just you use old ideas for new technology, and that's really important not to do. The second thing is to make sure that you're getting those out there to early adopters and creating a community of some sort, not just spinning it around in the four walls of your company, but taking that opportunity to bring in new and excited users, to get really good user testing. This is something I'm also passionate about. It's cultural bias in technology. Wearables tend not to necessarily see through all the different lines of cultural implications. So we got to make sure that we're using user testing, getting more and more people online, more and more people testing this, so we can, in the end, create a product that can be used by many different people and not just one particular space. For example, developing a wearable technology in Silicon Valley might have a very different take in rural America or another place in the world. So corporations have those resources. Like, they have no excuse not to do that. And it's really important that they just push through all the noise.
Thank you, Camille. Jordan, we'd love to hear from you here. Please go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. I think, with the big corporations, ultimately they have a responsibility to make sure that, as Camille said, that the innovation is being pushed in the right direction and that we're progressing in the right direction. I think that responsibility to make sure that ultimately the data is being used in the right use cases, is being used in the right areas, and is also that they're partnering, that big corporations are taking the opportunity to partner with startups and to partner with other innovative companies that maybe are focused in areas that, as a big corporation, they don't have not that they don't have the resources, but they don't have the time and the focus to focus on those very specified areas and to really champion those startups who are bringing innovative solutions. And you really do see that with corporate accelerators such as the IBM Accelerator and others that are really trying to partner and find strategic relationships with these startups that are bringing even more innovative solutions than some of the bigger corporations.
Thank you so much, Jordan. John, we'd love to hear from you here. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I think larger corporations are starting to open their doors quite a bit with respect to startups. They can't innovate fast enough. They might not have a niche level of expertise that, they need. And I think, as an entrepreneur, whether you look at a large corporation from a funding perspective, because I know a lot of them are starting to open up their own venture capital arms, or as a way to partner to accelerate your own technology. So we did an interesting project with Google a couple of years ago where it was a solution for the blind people to be able to really understand a sense of direction. So sending high fidelity frequencies to get them to understand where things were with respect to themselves, left, right, up, down, etc. So, whereas in the past it might have been much more of a closed environment, I think large corporations now are opening their doors because they know they need to innovate faster.
Thank you, John. Now, let's paint a picture of the future, and we'd love to hear from our whole panel here. We want to know how lives are going to be transformed. We want to know how it's going to transform business and economies. It's very exciting times ahead. We're going to go through our panel. What we want you to do is ask you what excites you in the space, what industries are going to be disrupted in the space. And we want you to each give your quickest, shortest answer that comes to mind, because we're here to learn from you. So we're going to run through the panel, starting with Jordan. What excites you and what industries are ripe for disruption when it comes to the space? Please go ahead.
Sure. I think what excites me is, for the last 5-10 years or so, everyone's been talking about wearable technology and IoT technology. And ultimately, I think in 2018, it'll be really cool to start to see the connectivity between various apps and various applications and uses of some of this wearable technology. So seeing how Apple Watch can combine with the new HomePod or how Microsoft can combine with the new Amazon Alexa or whatever, Seeing how there can be real connectivity from the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep will be interesting to see how that impacts people's daily lives as we progress in this industry. And then, sorry, the second part of that?
You got it. Thank you so much.
Okay.
There. Greg, we want to hear from you. What excites you? What industries are ripe for disruption when it comes to 2018 and beyond? Please go for it.
I think we're going to see a big shift or an increase in machine learning and artificial intelligence with all this data that's created. And that's where I'm really excited. Machines are going to aid and enhance the human condition.
Thank you so much. Darren, go for it.
In my view, I think partnering, collaboration is critically important. At the moment, there's still a lot of siloing going on. Everybody's doing their own thing. So I think if they actually put their efforts together, you can get some really incredible tools that actually add real value.
Fully agreed. Camille, what excites you? What industries are ripe for disruption in 2018?
Yeah, I know my data science friends are really excited about all the new data coming up. They're always trying to go for the jobs where they feel like, oh yeah, that company has a ton of data. So that's something that they tell me a lot. And yeah, I know that we're going to be increasing the data, our access to data, and being able to figure out new ways to use that. And I'm excited just to see all that come online.
Thank you, Camille. John, what excites you and what industries are ripe for disruption?
Well, we're most excited to collaborate with artists and creators to really unlock the potential of music and sound.
Thank you, Shiva. Go ahead.
Healthcare, I think, is the space where we have the biggest opportunity for disruption and change. From a positive perspective, I think I generally see the opportunity today for us, with all the data available, to take personal control of our health.
Thank you, Shiva. Thank you, Matthew. Let's hear it.
I'm going to agree with Shiva there. Healthcare is definitely a space ripe for disruption. And I think that the most exciting thing is knowing the unknown whilst not knowing that it's part of you, and recording you is the most exciting thing.
Thank you, Matthew. And Christian, please go ahead.
I too am very excited about healthcare. If people use products like John and Shiva are developing in small ways, they can improve their lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian. While we ask our VIPs to prepare their tweet piece of advice so we can all become wearable technology experts like them, thank you to everyone for an absolutely extraordinary session. We've got some awesome sessions coming up. Next week, we've got a very cool one, payments, transactions, and the foundations of commerce. They are critical to our lives. Definitely one you don't want to miss. And then the following week, we've got real estate, how the digital world is changing markets and the spaces we inhabit. You definitely don't want to miss it. Remember to keep us up to date in all your news. You can email us at inspireme@onlinefiresidechat.com. You can find me as well as all our VIPs on LinkedIn, and we love hearing from you. If you enjoyed today's show, remember to keep telling more entrepreneurs about it, because we're trying to reach a 100-country goal. Now we're going to ask our VIPs to share their tweet piece of advice, starting with Greg. Greg, please go ahead.
All right. Be happy and solve problems.
Love it. Darren, your tweet piece of advice.
Collaborate, collaborate, collaborate.
Great advice. Camille, your tweet piece of advice.
Yes, diverse representation matters in your data and your testing.
Love it. John, tweet piece of advice.
Wearable technology can make us all happier and healthier.
Yes, Jordan.
Validate your data and make sure what you're giving, the data you're providing to your customers is what you hope to accomplish.
Thank you. Shiva.
The primary purpose of exercise is not to burn calories, but to improve the functioning of your heart and muscles.
Yes. Matthew.
Technology can make humans more human and aware of their humanity.
Thank you. And Christian.
Be mindful of the complexities and challenges in your business ventures.
My tweet piece of advice, remember to be extremely grateful for everything you have. It's a privilege to be entrepreneurs, to be building our dreams, and to learn from extraordinary people such as the ones we had on the show today. Also, remember to keep hustling and never give up. And thank you to the man behind the scenes who was not only a panelist today, but has run the show for 2 years now, completely voluntarily. Thank you to Darren on behalf of all of us. On the count of 3, I'm going to ask our VIPs to shout bye, and we will see you next week, everybody. 1, 2, 3. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.